Thank you so much, Sukain. I would now request Ms. Upasana Rao, partner from Trilegal, to give an overview of the legal and regulatory landscape for impact investing in India.
Thank you very much. Um, Pleasure to be here. And on behalf of my colleagues who are in this room and myself, Trilegal is very pleased to support IIC always. We are a full service law firm with offices in 4 cities in India, and we are a knowledge partner and ecosystem partner to IIC. Um, so I will make very brief comments, but it is to emphasize the importance of the legal ecosystem as a critical enabler for achieving the objectives of the impact sector. And impact investing in India has, as we know, has significantly grown in the past few years, but it still is a small allocation of, the global um, uh, funds from impact investors. And one of the key factors to improve this allocation or to tap this the global funds would be to show legal readiness by way of a legal framework that can uh, demonstrate that there is clarity on the legal structures, on the instruments that can be used for impact investments, um, on repatriation of funds, tax implications, and in other words, legal certainty is quite critical to de-risk investment opportunities. Um, as far as the legal framework is concerned, there has been a lot of development in India in terms of new regulations, etc. But in terms of current regulation, typically we've seen that impact funds would, I would say there are three areas to essentially focus on. One is how to pool in the investment, so the pooling vehicles. Second is what instruments are available and how are they efficient for the focus of impact investment. And thirdly, what are the policy and regulatory uh, development that is happening, which is going to help in accelerating investments in impact areas. Um, so we have seen that mostly in terms of how investments are pooled in, it's in the form of an investment vehicle, which we call the alternate investment funds. And these are regulated by the Securities Exchange Board regulations in India, the SEBI's AIF regulations. And they also have, amongst those regulations, provided for a category of fund called the social impact funds, which are primarily structured for investments in social enterprises. In recent regulations, we've seen the regulator has actually defined social enterprises more with more focus on what impact areas would mean. There are regulations which enable issuance and listing of green debt securities. In the past, we have seen there was lack of clarity as to what is green debt, and in recent years, we've seen that there has been improvement in how these terms have been defined. They have been enlarged to include not just, um, green investment in, for instance, generation of renewable energy, or but also um, support functions as well as technology and R&D have been included within the meaning of green debt, which enables opportunities to raise capital for the ecosystem. Um, and then I was talking about AIFs. So AIFs are essentially a structure where these are funds which are investment vehicles, and why these are more popular for pooling in impact funds as well is because they essentially provide a tax pass-through status for investors, and uh, also in terms of for relevant for foreign investors is that AIS, if they are incorporated in India or set up in India with a domestic Indian controlled and Indian owned and controlled fund manager, can be seen as a domestic fund having domestic status as far as foreign investment laws are concerned. So for any investors investing in India, you would know that India has a very capital controlled economy. Equity and debt investments are regulated in terms of valuation requirements, pricing controls, repatriation controls, and those are um, structured better when there is a domestic fund, because these foreign exchange regulations would apply less. And in the same context, in a recent development, there is also a IFSC region in India, which is called the Gift City, where funds have been able to establish and get a little more regulatory flexibility and tax incentives as well. So, in comparison to SEBI regulated funds, funds, IFSC established funds have a little more flexibility. For instance, AIFs under SEBI regulations have diversification norms whereby each fund is not permitted to invest more than 25% of the investable funds in a single investee company. Now, in the context of impact sector, this might be a bit of a challenge, because for each impact project, you will have to tap in more than one fund. But this particular regulation would not apply if it's an IFSC fund. Separately, structuring with muted returns or differential returns for investors may not be possible as clearly under the SEBI's regulations, because of how SEBI is currently scrutinizing these funds. But there is more flexibility in the IFSC with regard to this issue. Um, Obviously, IFSCs are tax incentive zones, so there are tax benefits of units of funds established in the IFSCs um, have tax benefits. They're tax exempt for a particular period of time, and also IFSC acts as an authority as a single window. So compared to different regulators that one has to go to establish their vehicles in the IFSC, there's a single window. But apart from that, we've also seen a new avenue for raising impact funds which is with the social stock exchange. Now, the social stock exchange has opened as a new segment on existing stock exchanges, and it allows both not-for-profit as well as for-profit organizations to list and access funds from varied investors, right? So not for profit organizations can avail funds more in the form of grants. Now, the instrument is actually it's called the zero coupon, zero principal instrument. It's more in the form of a grant, because um, it cannot generate returns and profits. But um, the issue that we have seen is that there is a Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, the FCRA, which poses a lot of issues for grant sort of capital, and there have been no specific exemptions for this. For-profit organizations can also trade on the social stock exchange by issuing equity and debt instruments. Uh, Now, this is a new regime, and we will see how this goes. But essentially, with equity and debt instruments, we there is the general expectation of return on investment, valuation, track record, and credibility has to be shown. There's usually fund investors would expect to know what should be the investment horizon. Um, a collateral might be required for debt investments. Now, these issues are, they are not customized for impact sectors necessarily. So, what um, a lot of impact sector participants are looking to do is develop a innovative solution for this, which is in the form of blended finance. Now, blended finance actually blends um, concessional capital or philanthropic capital with commercial capital, where risk capital can help catalyze commercial capital at later stages. And there are different forms that we have seen in the market already, in the form of guarantees as well as concessional capital and impact bonds, which are basically outcome based funding. We've seen that these have started to take momentum in India, although there's a lot of possibility to scale up. And essentially, what this provides is that Impact bonds are instruments which provide performance-based returns. So initially there'll be risk capital from, it could be from CSR money, although there are various regulatory gaps which do not fully clarify how CSR capital can be employed towards impact bonds. But these are things that the policy is developing towards. And other than that, there's also, of course, technical assistance and R&D support, which also forms part of the blended capital ecosystem. And Sukain also spoke about regulatory intervention, but that would be an area how impact investment can improve in India or more, can be attracted a little more. So there has been a lot of regulatory push and um, uh, you know uh, regulatory intervention to improve and accelerate impact investment, particularly in the climate space. We have seen a lot of recent changes in policy which enable more energy transition and decarbonization, I could say, power. I'll wrap up quickly. I'll wrap up quickly. So there are different policy interventions which allow, which are going to lead to more investments in particularly climate as well as other impact sectors. There are challenges, of course, because the regulatory system is evolving and is required to customized to the impact sector specific needs. And there are suggestions that we work with people like IIC as well on policy advocacy to try to make some relaxations to suit impact investment. Um, and for instance, we through the IFSC and otherwise as well, tax exemptions or a little more standardization of disclosure norms, standardization of blended finance structure so that it can become more easy to implement and reduce costs going forward. And also ecosystem and capacity building for impact measurement would be good to have as far as regulatory interventions are concerned. So I'll wrap up with this, but me and my colleagues are in the room and feel free to meet up with us and speak a little more about the legal and regulatory environment. Thank you.